Welcome back to another tutorial. Today I'm going to show you exactly what collision layers and masks are in Action GameMaker. So with that said, let's get started. Alright, so here we are in an Action GameMaker project, but before I do this, I want to show you what we're going over today. If you come from PGM, you will remember that they had a setting of groups. And this group would dictate what you could hit, what you could walk on, and things like that. You could have a total of 32 object groups and 32 tile groups. And so the tiles were only about tiles, and then you would assign what objects did what. So for example, if you came to the player object, you would go to the settings, and you would say, hey, it can attack these groups, or the wall detection can hit these groups. And then the last one was for tiles, is when you would be affected by these tiles. And you would just add them just like this. As you had them, they would show up on the screen and you could do them. Now, these weren't very flexible. For example, the wall detection and the tile wall detections, you could not change throughout the game. So you couldn't change them during runtime. You could do something with attack detections. For example, you could use a action of, it was called attack settings, in which you can change the attack settings. And this was also where you added tile attack detections as well. But you could only change the attack settings basically during the runtime. Everything else was hard set. And so it wasn't very flexible. So now we can come to Action GameMaker, all right? And there's going to be some differences. So for example, if I click on a new tab up here, I can create a new game object, and I'll just name this new player. I'll just say that it's a character. Now you'll notice these are popped up right here. I am not sure if these are going to be finalized, so I'm just going to skip these, and I'm going to show you where to edit them in the actual nodes and stuff like that, which I think is going to be more useful in the end than on your initial setup, because you might not know what your layers and masks are initially. So anyway, we're going to set this up like this. Now, this group right here, this object group is different than in PGM. So the group that this is referring to is more like a tag. And this tag is basically a string in the back end, or a word basically of player. And so some detections and things are going to check if they have that tag, all right? But the actual collisions and detections are called the collision layers and masks, all right? You have your layers and masks. I wanted to point that out right away, that the group is just a tag. And so I'm going to tag it as a player, and then I'm going to say allow input devices, and we'll hit create. All right, so when you have this new object right here, you can see that this base node right here has a collision. It's actually this one right here, yeah, collision. If I drop this down, you can see that it has a layer and a mask, all right? And it comes preset with these. In Godot, it just comes preset like this, so it's not much different. But basically what these are is the layer is what kind of a detection this object is, and then the mask is what detections this object can detect. So for example, let's say that this player is a layer 1. And then let's say that we make another object here, and let's just call this one an enemy. It is also a character. It's an enemy tag or group, and it does not have input devices. So we'll click OK on this, and then we'll go to its collision layer, and let's just get rid of these. And let's say that this layer for an enemy is a layer 2. Okay, so now with the player, if I wanted them to not be able to move through the player or through an enemy, then I would go to mask here and I would click on 2. And that would mean that I am a layer 1 for the player, and then the mask is detecting a layer 2 or an enemy. And then in the enemy, I would say that this is a layer 2, and I'm detecting a layer 1 or a player. Now, we can make this easier on us. We can actually go here and we can edit layer names. And we could say 1 is the player layer or player, and 2 is the enemy layer. All right, so we can close that. Now, it won't show right here, but if you highlight it, it will just say player right there. And if I highlight this one, it will say enemy. If I highlight this one, it won't say anything, or it just says the layer 3, the name of it. All right. And so that is the basic gist of it. So you can kind of see that you have basically 32 layers to play with, and these are the same. So it's not like you have an additional 32, But you can see that you could set up specific things. So for example, you could have an enemy that you also want to have another layer attached to it so that it could detect it. So this enemy could be added a layer 3. Now if you go to your player here, the base detection, which is what this is, this owner node right here, is actually your wall detection. So what's going to hit. So this means that I can hit, as far as like when I'm walking, I will touch an enemy and stop on enemy 2. But this one could also be a layer 3 so that it could go through some enemies, but maybe not this enemy. And so you could have a bullet that can go through most enemies, but maybe not this enemy by assigning the bullet's mask of 3. All right, so I do think that that is a good introduction to this. I want to show you some more collision layers we have though. So for example, let's go back to the player here, this new one. You can add an attack area, and this attack area is going to have its own collision. So you can see if you click on this attack area node right here, you can go to the collision tab right here, and this has its own collision layers. So let's go back and let's rename this, and let's rename this a player attack, and then let's make a new one called enemy attack. Or actually, let's do enemy hurtbox. Let's do that, okay? And then you would eventually make one probably for enemy attack and player hurtbox. Now, I'm not organizing these very well. I probably want to keep players together. So let me just fix this right here. So we have an enemy attack, enemy hurtbox. And one thing that I actually do in my Godot games is I kind of break these in sections. So I say that this is going to be all for tiles, or even this top row is for tiles, this bottom row is for player. And then this top row will be for enemies, let's just say, and these ones will be for certain gimmicks. So that's kind of how I organize it because it's easier to click right here and just know at a glance that, okay, these are all my player detections, these are all my enemy detections, and things like this. But everyone will have their own style, but that was just a little thing that I do. All right, so we're going to click on this, and this is the player's attack. So we're going to go over here, and we're going to select the layer that it is. And remember, we created a player attack layer. So this is a player attack layer. All right, and then we're looking for a player hurt layer, hurt box right here. Now, let's just say that we had another layer, and let's go edit layers here, and let's just name this tiles. Basic tiles. Let's just do that. Basic tiles. All right. Now, let's just say that we wanted this attack to also affect tiles. Well, we would come and find that, and I can't remember which one it was, so I can just look it up real quick and click on that. Right. So it's kind of cool because you can just click on these and see the layers real quick and then edit them. When you don't have anything on there, it wants you to edit them. But now that we have these, so let's see here. It is a player attack. That is true. And we can do player hurt boxes. Nope. We want enemy hurt boxes. So enemy hurt boxes and basic attacks. Now let's just say that this thing could trigger like a reflectability. You might want a particular bullet or an attack box to maybe hit another enemy attack as well. All right. So, but let's just do this for now. Okay, the basic tiles, because I need to show you how to set up tile collision as well. All right, so we set it up for the enemy hurt box. However, we never set up the enemy hurt box. So let's go back to our enemy here and let's add a thing called a hit area. Now, I think this name might change to hurt box because we're trying to, a hit area is almost the same as an attack area. So as far as like terming goes, so I think this is going to be named hurt box in the end. However, if it is hitbox, then it's meaning a hurt box, okay? And basically, we're going to go to collisions here. We're going to set this one up as a enemy hurt box. So it's not a player, it is a enemy hurt box. And then we're going to say that it can get hit by a player attack, right? So now this hitbox is set up to detect a player's attack, and this player's attack is set up to hit an enemy hurt box, right? Now there's some other cool nodes that also do collision. I'll just do a sight range node here. And you can see that if you go down to the collision, you're looking at the layer that it is. Now this doesn't have to be a layer. For example, this sight range, you probably don't want to be a layer itself. You only want it to be detecting. And so you can actually just remove the layer and say, hey, this is nothing, so I can't detect nothing can detect me, but I want to be able to detect, for example, enemies, all right? And yeah, enemies. And then one cool thing that this site node has that the field of vision does not in Pixel GameMaker is it has a detect behind cover. So you can say, hey, there's certain detections that I don't want you to take into consideration, even if my sight range is seeing this. So for example, I could say a basic tile, and then that would allow or not allow sight if the object, an enemy in this case, is behind a basic tile. All right. And so now that we've gone over this, let's go over how to set these up in the tiles. And now I need to remember that 7 is a basic tile. Now, one thing I just want to be very clear on is that this mask right here is mainly for using logic. So for example, you won't be able to use any logic unless the mask has the layer selected that it can use. But it can still be affected by it. And a good example of this is tile sets, for example. This basic tile set right here, right now it's set to 1, 1, okay? Now I know that I had tiles at 7, so let's just set that up correctly. But even if I don't have a mask for it right now, this player will still be able to go on these collisions. So if I playtest this right now, you'll see that I'm still on collisions even though I'm not detecting anything in the mask. Now, if I wanted to have any logic happen from the tile set, so for example, if I wanted a script on this tile set, and in this case, it would have to be a GD script, I'm pretty sure, but let's just say that I wanted a script on this. The only way I could do anything coding-wise is if I had masks for it, because I wouldn't be able to detect anything unless I had this masking up. So it's kind of might be a little challenging to understand that you can actually have a mask for one object and not the same mask, so you're not detecting that object, and yet the collision is still working. And that is mostly because the mask is going to hit no matter what of this, but you're just not going to be able to use logic on the tile, for example, because you don't have the mask set up for it to detect what's touching it. I hope that makes sense. Now let's continue on with the tiles here. You can also add many different physics layers, okay? So we have 0 layer right here. So if you go to tile set right here and you select a bunch of these tiles, you can see that we have a physics tab or drop down right here. And now we have 0 and 1. If I add another 1, we would have 2. And so I'll just delete that one. So this first one is a 7. And now let's just make a number 8, which I've named enemy only tile. All right. And this one, because my player is not detecting it, I will walk right through it. So let's set up a tile for that. And let's go to tile set. Let's select these tiles. And let's go to 0, make sure that nothing is set up right here, nothing's set up. And then let's go to 1 and make sure that we set stuff up here. So I'm going to press F, and it's going to set all these up with a collision layer. All right. So this has a collision layer. Matter of fact, I'm going to debug and turn on visual collision shapes. But I will be able to walk through this because we're using physics layer 1, which is an 8. All right. So now if we play test this, I will be able to walk right through it, even though it has a collision layer. Now, if I change this to 7 and 8, now the player will not be able to walk through it. Okay. So tiles are pretty cool because you can have flexible collision layers. You can even in the collision or in the tile set here, you can go to setup and you can create alternative tiles. So I could create a tile right here and create an alternative tile, and it will create this alternative tile. Now, if I go and select it, I can say that this one, I guess you can only do it one at a time. But yeah, this one I could change the physics layer for and say that this one is a a 0, and then this one can still be a 1. So you can use the same tile for different physics layers if for some reason that's what you need. Yeah, alternative tiles are pretty cool. All right, so another cool thing that the collision system has is that these are now able to be changed during runtime. All right, so click on here, and let's just say in the idle, we're going to do that change thing. We're going to do an object property. We're going to do it of the self. Okay. Now, here is where you will select the node name that you want to change. So if you want to change the object collision, tile collision, you're going to want to change this base player. If you want to change your attack area detection, you're going to want to come down here to, so these are, all of these things are because of the skeleton thing that it uses. So there will be some bloat in the nodes. But if we go down here, we can see attack area. So let's just say that we wanted to change the player's collision area. We would just select this, and we would find the collision layer right here. And what we would do is we would then assign right here, so we would say equal, and we would assign a new collision layer to it, all right? So let's just say we wanted to do the attack area right here. Boom, we would assign its collision layer, which is what it is. And if we wanted to do a mask for what it detects, then we would do this, all right? So that is basically, and we can do this during runtime for any object now, which again, coming down to PGM, we could only do that in attack settings. We could only do that with attack settings. Now we can do that with attack settings. We could do that with a hit area. We could also do that with site. Let's add a site node right here. So add a site range node. We can go into here and add that. So property self, we could find the site node. You might have to save it actually. I don't think I saved it. So let's just add it, save it. So now let's see if it will detect it. So now we go down here and we have a, we don't have the site node. Let me remove it and see if it might be a little delayed. Let's just see. Yep, site range. Okay, so you might have to redo it right as of right now. It might not be updating right away. Yeah, you just select the site node and you could change a bunch of its stuff. You can change the, let's find the collision layer mask, the mode, the layer, collision priority, the obstacle layer. So let's just say that this site can now see through walls. You get an upgrade and now your bullet can see through the walls. You can change the value so that that happens. And that's really, really amazing actually, what you can do with this. You can also just do regular collision nodes. So let's just say that you added a common one is a raycast, okay? So a raycast where it has a collision mask right here. You can go into here, let's save it, and let's go back into here and property, self. We can go down to that raycast and we can change its, again, collision mask down here. And then boom, you would change the collision mask. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, you can drop them below. Discord forums, which figured out. That said, I'll see you at the next video.